Hi everyone, this is Chandrakishore from Indian Environment Network. Welcome everyone to this second episode of the Global Learning School series. The first series on how to clean the lake. You won't believe it. We had like 12,000 people who really got trained on it. So it was a really grand success. And so we decided that we should keep at it. And here we are on the second episode on how to purchase green electronics. And I'm fortunate to have with me Sarah O'Brien from Green Electronic Council. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you? Hello,
Good,
everyone.
good. Uh, 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 we are very fortunate to have you on this precast. And uh, when we were thinking about teaching our environment professionals on the very techniques and how to get better on environmental conservation and concerns in this the IT industry was one of the biggest one that we thought, which is making an impact in this world today. And India is really riding the wave as we see it on
Mhm,
electronics per se and the IT industry
mhm.
per se. So it's very fortunate that we have you today on our network and. Um, Let me just tell us this is we know all about purchasing and then came green purchasing and then what is this green purchasing of electronics?
Mhm. Well, we'll talk about that in a lot more detail, but in general, I mean, I think that everyone's aware that electronics are kind of two-sided. In the one, on the one side, information and communications technology can be incredibly helpful with sustainability, right? It can replace, for example, we can replace travel with this kind of webcast, web presence,
Right.
saving all kinds of carbon emissions and other environmental impacts. There are all kinds of efficiencies that IT technology allows in agriculture, in water conservation, in all kinds of environmental initiatives. But all of the equipment that's used, all of the hardware that's used to achieve those gains is, first of all, highly resource intensive.
Hmm.
Making a laptop, even though it's a very small thing, I think it's about 700 times the weight of resources used than the
Wow.
weight of the laptop.
Right.
Very significant. I mean, a car, I think, is 2 to 1, and a laptop is like 700 to 1. So
Wow, that's
very
great
highly resource
information,
intensive.
right?
Yeah. And, unfortunately, we tend to have a lot of technological improvement, which means that there's a lot of discarding of one generation of technology to move on to the next generation of technology. And that would be fine if we were doing a really good job at refurbishing and reusing and keeping those older products in use. But what tends to happen, at least in a lot of the developed world, is those things just go into the waste stream.
Right.
So, so when we're looking at green purchasing for electronics, there are a lot of different elements. For
Hmm.
example, we want to try and address this whole issue of resource conservation. We don't want to see that 700 times of resources just used for a couple of years and then thrown away. We want to look at the toxic elements that are
Right.
incorporated into computers. I mean, there are many toxic aspects that, toxic elements like mercury and cadmium and lead that have a certain functionality within electronics. But as technology improves, as we focus attention on those toxic pieces, components, the industry has been able to be incredibly inventive and innovative and eliminate a lot of those toxics. So we want to look at that piece. We want to
Okay.
look at energy, of course, because energy is a huge impact. Both the energy that's used when you're using electronics, when you're using your computer or cell phone or other device, and also the immense amount of energy. Some studies indicate it's about 80% of the lifetime energy use of an electronic product is used in the manufacture of that product. So again, addressing both that resource consumption to make the product and resource consumption while we're using it. There are a lot of impacts and aspects to it. It's really interesting. What I was going to say, it's really interesting to me because I've worked in green purchasing for a long time, and something like a cleaning product, you may be able to tweak the formulation some, but it's pretty much, once it's made, it's made. Electronics are really, really complex and changing all the time. So they're a really interesting commodity to try and address through green purchasing initiatives, and also really hard to address.
Yeah, I understand that whenever you talk about conservation, it's like about developing standards, right? Uh, so uh, so I understand that Green Electronics Council brought major players together and developed that EPAT standard to address the concerns of electronic industry, right? So tell me, what is this EPAT all about?
Well, EP was absolutely developed because people were kind of at their wits' end. The manufacturers had a lot of environmental initiatives going. There were various environmental regulations they had to meet, but they were meeting with dozens and dozens of different requests and requirements from different purchasers. So every time they answered an RFP, they had to come up with a whole set of different data and deliver it in a different way and so forth. So they were struggling to communicate the value of what they were doing. And on the purchasing side, as we've just touched on, it's a very, very complex set of products. Purchasers were really struggling to try to decide, well, should I just look at energy? Should I look at toxics? Which is more important? What shall I ask for? And so they were developing, or struggling to develop, adequate requirements for these products. So actually, the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, stepped forward with some funding to just convene stakeholders, purchasers, manufacturers, environmental advocates, researchers who could understand the direction technology would be taking, all parties to really try and say, well,
what year did that
what
happen?
can
What
we
year did
develop?
that happen? What was the
That
year
was
that it?
in 2002, late in 2002, and in 2003, they launched this process, this stakeholder development process, to come up with some kind of green screen for electronic products.
Okay.
And was very interesting because at the time, everybody was very cooperative. Everybody thought, well, the manufacturers, the environmentalists, everyone thought, sure, this is a little project. I was part of that project as a green purchasing expert. Let's come up with this what's called the reason it's called EPEAT is it stands for Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, which was what the project was called.
Now you have it.
So we don't say that every time. We shorten it up to EPEAT. That's simpler.
Right.
But what was really interesting was how quickly this tool was taken up all around the world. I mean, it was developed really thinking of US government purchasing, other government purchasers, but almost immediately, as you and I were talking about a little while ago, we had a very small organization, and we had this program that was put up on the web, and very, very quickly we saw that there was demand and interest from Brazil, from the EU, from Australia, from Canada, all over the place. Purchasers were jumping in to use this system because it worked really well for them.
So how many countries now use the standard?
42 countries, and we're actually just expanding to cover India, so that'll be the 43rd. So it's
you're welcome to India, and I think it would be a great success there. But the major part is in the training and how you uh, put those standards there. But one question that comes to my mind, why shouldn't India develop it locally? Why should it be like a global system that we need to adhere to?
Mhm. Well, what's interesting is that the electronics market is a global market. I mean, products are created and sold worldwide, and many of them by the same large global companies.
Hmm.
So, if purchasers really want to have an impact and really want to drive change in that market, they need to aggregate their demand. Um,
Okay.
you know, as in the era before EPEAT, everybody was asking for something different. It's very hard for manufacturers to adequately meet those demands, or for those demands to point out a pathway, a real direction towards transformation. And so what EPEAT has done quite well, and I say this as someone who's worked on a lot of green purchasing projects and seen a lot of green purchasing sort of make improvements around the margins.
Okay.
What EPEAT seems to have done very successfully is really change the direction of the electronics market. I mean, we hear from uh, manufacturers in the supply chain that
Right.
they're changing their practices in order to meet EPEAT requirements by the top OEMs. So the reason, personally, that I think it's very important to kind of tap into this not global but very broad system is because it really can drive that change and reward manufacturers for doing the right thing.
But like, what is your definition of green in green electronics, basically? How,
Well,
yeah,
that's a really good and a really complicated question. In EPEAT, which is one project of the Green Electronics Council, we look at toxics, we look at recycled and bio-based materials, we look at packaging, we look at energy efficiency, product longevity, which is very important for keeping those products in use. Um, what else? Recyclability, manufacturer take back and recycling schemes available for the products. So we really try and look at all of those aspects of the life cycle without necessarily weighting the system towards one or the other. I mean, I think that we could all, debate forever exactly which point is the most important, but our perspective is that the most important thing is to cause pressure on the marketplace for the manufacturers to deal with all of the environmental endpoints and
right.
all of their inputs as well. So the thing about a Dell or an HP as they develop a series of contracts that go through their really hugely global supply chain,
Right.
um, if they can ask for consistent things throughout that supply chain, there's a beneficial impact in all kinds of places, in all sorts of different businesses, resource extraction, etc. So we really think that the most important thing is to try and address this from a life cycle perspective and try and ask for everything, ask for
Right.
improvement on all fronts.
And it is great that like these companies now adhere to the same standard that they are put into in US and Europe, and they have to adhere to the same standard. They cannot say that saying, oh, you are a developing country, so we will have some more leeway, or we can get away with something. If you have a global system, you have to adhere to the same standard. So
Exactly,
that's,
exactly.
yeah, that's really good. So
But the
what do you
interesting
mean?
thing too, Chandra, the
Uh,
interesting thing too is that we developed EPEAT as a kind of hybrid between the two, because often with the global certification, the product gets one stamp of approval and then it's sold everywhere under that certification. And EPEAT
right.
actually has requirements for local support because we have service criteria, because we
Okay.
require take back and responsible recycling, we require certain elements of warranty, extended warranty support, etc. We make sure that there is a network of verifiers in place, and we
Okay.
do verification on an ongoing basis of those local services. So a company can't just say, okay, it's EPEAT and I can sell it anywhere. And in fact, they're not allowed to say that under their agreement with EPEAT. They have to have in place, they have to register specifically for a country, and they have to
Okay.
demonstrate that they have the services in place to support that registration locally.
Okay. So what does it mean that to cover a country? How do you go about that?
Yeah. Well, we work with a number of people. We work with a number of organizations, large global certification and testing organizations. So first of all, it means making sure that we have services for manufacturers who want to register in a specific area. So they can get some support. They can be vetted. You know, their contracts, say with an e-waste recycler, can be vetted through a registration process to make sure that it meets the EPEAT requirements. And then we have ongoing verification investigations. So EPEAT, again, is somewhat different from a lot of certification systems. We do incoming checking on registrations.
Okay.
But rather than just being a purely pre-certification program and then just, you know, again, giving that stamp of approval and allowing that product to be sold, we recognize that the electronics supply chain is incredibly dynamic.
Right.
One time I was speaking with one of the environmental guys from one of the large global companies, and he said their estimate is that in a 3 to 5 year period that a product is for sale on the market, maybe 70% of the materials and parts change from the original, you know,
Right.
box that was
Yeah.
sold. So you can't just say, okay, great, you know, we've checked that box, we've checked you coming in, because that,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
all the components in like laptops and everything, it's constantly changing, right?
yeah, constantly changing. So what we do is we have ongoing verification. We do a surprise. We take what's called a snapshot of our registry, so no one can change the registration after we announce the verification. We select
Okay.
a random group or a targeted group of products and criteria. We investigate those. And another thing that sets us apart is that if a manufacturer fails to show that they can support the declaration for a certain criterion, we actually
Right.
publish a public report on every verification round. So, you know, as you know, global brands are very, very concerned with reputation management. They don't want to be seen to have any problem like that. So we find that the system is very, very good at keeping them attentive to their declarations. It's not that they can't change suppliers, it's not that they can't change materials, but if they do so, they need to go through the same process and make sure that that supplier is providing them with a component or a material that still meets the criteria that they've declared for that product. So it's an interesting hybrid system in
Right.
keeping people, kind of keeping that rolling verification going.
But like, how's this green electronic product different from the general electronic product that these same companies might be selling?
Well, they've designed out a lot of the toxics. They not only meet the RoHS requirements, but they also go beyond that in many cases. They're optional complete elimination criteria for the cadmium, lead, mercury, hexchrome, and other toxic substances that are addressed in RoHS. They've usually incorporated recycled content, significant amounts of recycled resins. And that's something that's very different. It was interesting when we were developing EPEAT, the EPA had just commissioned a study on how much recycled plastic resin was available for electronics manufacturing. And the study said, well, we think that about you could try and include about 1 to 2% of the resin
Okay.
used in a computer could be recycled resin. And we now see we have two criteria, one for 10% or higher and one for 25% or higher. And we have many, many products now that are meeting 25% or higher recycled resin content, which is a huge, it's millions and millions of pounds when we've spoken with the companies about how much recycled resin they've sourced. So it's that kind of thing. It's looking at driving toward, I wouldn't claim that we're there by a long shot, but driving toward a much more circular economy. So trying to find ways to recuperate the materials in used electronics when it's end of life, trying to find ways that those, for example, another example of how they might be different from other products that they create. They will have modular components that can be switched out. That's an optional criterion they can meet. They might have all the plastics marked. What's interesting though, it's hard to distinguish sometimes because ePEAT has had such significant uptake, and our manufacturers report back to us on their sales, and last year was about 114 million ePEAT registered products sold. What happens is over time, practices that at first are adopted just to meet ePEAT become something that a manufacturer can meet broadly. Once you've set up the system to integrate recycled plastic into your products, you can put it into any number of products. So the idea behind ePEAT is that it'll sort of drive the thin end of the wedge, those innovative products that meet a higher performance standard, but that really what we're doing is rewarding manufacturers for figuring out these processes, which then can really travel throughout their supply chain. Or that's the hope. That's the optimum kind of scenario.
Okay, but this is from the manufacturing point of view. What is it there for the purchasers? Why should they suddenly start buying green electronics?
Right. Well, I mean, there are some very immediate impacts. One, many of the folks who are looking at this through the network portal are obviously already concerned with green purchasing or aware of green purchasing.
So I know Indian Environment Network professionals would be very concerned about the electronics that they're using, but for the big companies to start incorporating green purchasing standards within their own purchasing criteria, what's in it for them there?
Well, the immediate gain is energy use reduction. So there are energy efficiency requirements for ePEAT, and obviously the less energy you use, the less operating your equipment costs you. So that's the sort of bottom line, most obvious and most immediate savings for companies.
Big companies will immediately see that. What can it do to their bottom line? So if it can have demonstrable effect on their bottom line through energy efficiency, they will certainly go for it.
Absolutely. And the nice thing with ePEAT, I mean, we often get asked within the US or within the EU, where Energy Star is very commonly used, what's the difference between ePEAT and Energy Star? And my answer is always, well, in Energy Star, you get energy efficiency. In ePEAT, you get Energy Star because we model our specification. We require Energy Star as the baseline. And you get up to 50 other environmental performance attributes. So it's like all of the rest of the environmental performance improvement is free. If you're already asking for energy efficiency, you might as well get the whole package. And reduce your environmental impact over the life of those products. So
that's great. And I see that you have prepared a small slide for our viewers. Let me put this on air.
Okay.
And for our viewers, if you go on this, you can just drag the window to anywhere you want, which is comfortable on your laptop, and just put it right there. So you can just drag it anywhere on your window. So it should not interfere with our presentation. You can put it on the right or left, and then as Sarah goes to a particular slide, she will tell us which slide she's looking at. Then you can also go and look at that slide.
Sure. So I won't, you and I have been having a great conversation about some of the content that's in these slides. I won't reiterate all of that. So in some cases, we can just hop over. But this is a nice piece if you're interested in telling someone else about EPEAT. It's kind of a little memory
Right,
jog.
certainly. Yeah, and that's what like our viewers and our environment professionals would appreciate, that they can just go turn it and just tell their own companies this is what EPEAT is.
Absolutely. It makes it much simpler than trying to recollect, after the fact.
Right.
So, the interesting thing about EPEAT is that it started rather small, as Chandra and I were talking about earlier, but that very quickly, within the first year, which the system launched in 2006 publicly, within the first year, we had 1,000 registered products. And that's partly because we structured the program to, it doesn't cost per product fees for manufacturers. It's an annual fee. So any product a manufacturer has that qualifies, that they can support and have the documentation on it, everything, they can register. So we now have over 3,000 products across 42 countries from 60 manufacturers.
Wow.
So it's certainly got the volume and the global reach that a purchaser might need, particularly if you are working with a large organization, international organization. EPEAT can really serve that organization well by allowing central specification of, I want EPEAT, I want it in all of these countries, and that's the end of it. I don't have to come up with 20 different specifications I'm asking for.
Okay. So on page 2, I see that you cover more than 3,000 plus products, right, in 42 countries now. Oh, wow, that's great.
Absolutely. So, the other great thing about that is that if you go to, say, you're an environmental sustainability officer, if you go to your IT department and say, I'd like you to use this sustainable IT standard, their first question will be, well, is it going to limit my choice? Are we going to have to use some company I've never heard of? Is this some sort of, weak, non-high performance machine? And it's very, very reassuring to send them to our registry, which is a publicly accessible database. You can always go to our site at epeat.net and search the database. And quite often they'll find a lot of products that are very familiar, and they'll certainly see that their choice is not restricted. So that's one of the strengths in terms of the willingness of IT professionals to use EPEAT is its scope and breadth. So we talked about the user benefits, really simplifying for both parties. That's the next slide. Simplifying for purchasers, preventing the need for a lot of original research and development of specifications, and simplifying for manufacturers how they can communicate environmental benefit and what criteria they need to meet to reap market rewards for their environmental work.
And
so the
slide
next slide.
6, sorry, slide 6, I'm at slide 6, and it says how products are rated in EPEAT. That's very interesting. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. The products are rated on the basis of we have multiple product categories, right? We have a standard for PCs and displays, a standard for imaging equipment, which is copiers and printers and multifunction devices and so forth, and a standard for TVs, and other standards in development. Each of the standards has somewhere around 50 to 55 criteria that are applied to the product. About half of those are required criteria. So a product has to meet between 20 and 25 criteria in any of those standards to even qualify for the bottom level rating, which is the bronze rating. So even at that bronze level, that product is meeting multiple criteria across all the different categories that we've talked about, different attributes. Then a product qualifies as silver if it meets between 50 and 75% of those optional criteria. So it's not only meeting the first 25 or so, it's then meeting, 12 to 15 others. And then finally, the greenest, the highest rating is gold. And to attain the gold rating, you have to meet 75% or higher of those optional criteria. So the thought.
Do you have examples of manufacturers who are on the gold standard right now?
Well, it's product by product. So a manufacturer doesn't actually get to be all gold. Every product has to be declared against the criteria, and then the system actually scores them automatically. So the manufacturer comes in and says, I can meet this, 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 and this, and then the system assigns their product a certain rating. So the way the system is designed is to create a baseline for, what's the sort of lowest level of leadership in the environmental space. And then above that, it's really designed to drive the manufacturers to do additional work. I mean, I remember when we first developed EP, and it's happening with the new standards, the imaging and TV standards now, the manufacturers, no product rated gold for the first year. And the manufacturers would come to us and say, well, we're having meetings and we're trying to figure out which additional criteria we can meet. So it's really, the tiered rating has really done a good job at driving further performance improvement beyond just that, hey, I got my product in, So you can see some of the criteria. The next slide 7 gives an idea of what some of those criteria are. It's a little bit detailed, it takes some looking at, but it shows that we really do try and cover multiple criteria in all of these different areas. With some consistency.
You have environmental sensitive materials, design, product, energy conservation, end of management. You have covered like almost all aspects of the entire life cycle of a product.
Yeah, and you'll see there are multiple criteria, usually, between 6 to 10 or 11 in each of those categories. So very, very comprehensive set of measurements. And then the verification, I talked about the fact that on the next slide, we talked a little bit about the verification. We do vet the products coming in. We do a document review, a desk review. And in fact, depending on the manufacturer's competence and demonstration of their understanding, some manufacturers, particularly smaller manufacturers who don't have a giant environmental team and so forth, may remain on desk review for months or even years. If we feel that they really need that hand holding. So the desk review is really gauged on the responses from the manufacturer. The manufacturer says, absolutely, I've got everything lined up here. Here's all my documentation. I've understood everything correctly. Then they move forward and they're able to do some registration independently. But all registration is subject to this ongoing verification. So there's always that, that possibility that you're going to be checked up on at any point.
So
and then I wanted to mention, sorry.
In terms of India, so once all the, what is the process right now that manufacturers have started registering their products in the EPAT registry?
Yes. What we do when we add a country is there's a 60-day period that manufacturers have to work with registration organizations and get products registered. So during that period, it's not open to the public because we're just sort of filling out the registry. And then we expect that the public registry will launch in April. And hopefully with many, many products, but we never know. I mean, it grows over time. Usually it's all a process of sort of chicken and egg. You need purchaser demand, but in order for purchasers to use the system, you need enough product in it, that can meet their
Right.
requirements.
So,
So we really try and support the growth of the system so that manufacturers want to register more because more purchasers are looking for EP. As I was telling you earlier, what we've heard a little bit in India is.
do you have a public only in April?
Uh-oh, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. What I was saying is that do you have a list of manufacturers who are already started adding to the registry?
Well, we don't. During the 60-day period, we let them all be non-public so that they can develop their registrations. But then what we will do is, first of all, we'll open the registry to the public so you can go in and search for India just like the other 42 countries. And second of all, we will have a launch event, an announcement, and really once the registry is open to the public, that's really where my job comes in, to communicate to lots and lots of purchasers and to encourage them to take advantage of having this system available to them.
Okay.
So hopefully by the summer, there will be a significant amount of registrations and a significant amount of purchasers learning that they can use this system to access greener products.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that my member environment professionals are by that time very proficient in how to purchase green electronics through you, basically, and they can probably go to their companies and tell them, look, now we have the standard right there, and we have all the major manufacturers on the registry. So why not show their corporate responsibility and go for green electronics, and at the same time add to their bottom line through energy efficient products. So that's a win-win situation for everyone.
Yes, exactly. And with the number of huge IT and ICT firms and service companies in India, it's a natural market, I think, because there's so much, very high volume purchasing by those firms. And with a very simple step of using EPEAT, they can reduce their energy impacts and improve their environmental performance overall. And obviously, the higher volume you purchase, the more that impact is significant. So when we talk about the registry opening to the public, this next slide just talks a little bit about, and folks can read this, but I really encourage you. One of the
real you're talking about?
This is slide number 9. Yeah, about the central registry. One of the great features of EPEAT is that we have a very significant search functionality in the website. You can go in and search by manufacturer. You can get just a summary of which manufacturers have products registered in a given country, but you can dig all the way down, because purchasers were involved in developing this. You can dig all the way down and search by, for example, optional criteria. For if you had, say, a policy in one state about mercury reduction or mercury elimination, you could go in and say, well, I only want those products that have eliminated mercury. And you can search on that criterion and only get that pool of products. There's a great deal of functionality. So I encourage people, now, before they're actively shopping, to really try that, just try that search functionality out and see how it works. So when they do come to, and then, then when you're actually shopping, it's very helpful, again, to just go in there and see. Perhaps you work with a certain supplier. If you want to continue working with that supplier, maybe you have a contract in place. You don't, you can make this change even if you have contracts in place. I always encourage folks to go to that supplier and say, well, okay, yeah, we have a contract in place. I need these same performance attributes. I need the same pricing. But what EPEAT registered products can you offer me? Or are some of these products already EPEAT registered, And now that I know that, I can count those in my greener products column and, make some changes going forward to increase those numbers.
I understand that EP Act also develops like contracting templates that purchaser can use to
Absolutely.
really make their purchasing process easy.
Yeah, yeah, we have model policies and model contract language, and we really encourage folks to just cut and paste, as long as,
Right.
I've worked with purchasers for a long time. Purchasers like to have their own style of language and contract, but at least it's a very strong starting point for ensuring that you can ask for EP. You need to ask for EP in the country where you're purchasing, because again, as we talked about, it's very important to look for the products that are registered where you're purchasing, so they're verified and supported there. But yes, absolutely, we provide model language. We also provide a purchaser program to give purchasers recognition. So you can have your organization's name on our website. You can get a certificate saying, we admire your purchasing commitments. We do little case studies with purchasers, so if that's something that would be helpful. Again, it's always nice to get credit for the good work that you do, and often an environmental staff person in a large organization may not really have an easy way to get that credit, so we try and supply them with, look, we got this certificate, or look, we got this award,
exactly.
Look, we're on this website. It gives them that something to point out that their manager might
proud feeling to be contributing to the environmental cause. So I think it's certainly helpful that these companies can go about displaying those certifications and tell the world that they are environmentally compliant.
Absolutely, absolutely, that they're really doing the right thing. So. So I won't talk about the growth too much, but this second section of the slides just shows a little bit how the growth was, which countries are covered currently, and which of those, which national governments use EP, because a number of national governments, including the US, Australia, Canada.
Yes,
then,
see on
there's
slide 13, you have a list of all the countries that you have.
Exactly. And slide 14 is a list of all the manufacturers. Unfortunately, we've gotten to have so many manufacturers, that's getting very, very small. So I have to think of another way to show that sometime. You can go on our website and certainly see the list.
Yeah, I see you have Apple there, so some like Apple fans should rejoice that they have Apple right there. So.
No, all of the top 10, all of the top 10, top 15 actually in the PC space, and all of the top 10 imaging equipment companies are participants. So, and what's interesting, if you look at this list, we also, because of this sliding scale fee idea, we really wanted to make sure that this certification didn't shut small business and local business out of this market. So there are many, many names on here that you may not recognize at all. And that's because they're local. We have a number of, I think we have 8 local companies in Brazil. We have a number of Polish companies, a Lithuanian company. So we really want the system to be open, and in India as well, to the small manufacturers who may be supplying.
That's very key, that you can reach out to each and every one of them instead of just being part and parcel of the Big 10.
Absolutely. We don't want to be an anti-competitive kind of a program. We want to help everyone who wants to and is able to meet the criteria to do so. And we've found that, in Brazil, in Poland, and elsewhere, those small companies are selling to the national government agencies that require EP. They're very successful. It's challenging for them because it is a hard standard to meet, but with the right support and with the right dedication and with a big contract in play, it's worth it to them, and they're able to meet the requirements. So that's very important to us. And as I say, again, it's not that it's not a lot of money, but it's a $1,500 a year fee, which also, we're not asking them for 1,500 or 10,000 per product.
Right.
We are really asking them for one fee for as many products as they can support in the market. So
That's great.
yeah, it's
And
really important, I think. And it's really
right,
important that green purchasing not be used just as a way for, or not end up only serving those global companies. We love the global companies, they're doing great work,
right.
but there should be room for competition in every national marketplace. There should be the ability for those within that marketplace to compete on equal footing. So,
Yeah, and
so,
I
so
hope that like our environment professionals, our members get trained on green purchasing, and that can open up very big avenues, even career avenues to them for
yeah,
teaching about green electronics and training their employers about green electronics and help them purchase these green electronics. So that's pretty
absolutely.
important for all of us. So
Well, and maybe I'll come back some other time and do a just basic green purchasing training, because green purchasing is
exactly, no,
my
no, certainly, yeah,
my
we'll love to have
background.
you here for just basic green purchasing because I know you have all the background, and we will certainly love to have you with us on green purchasing.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming to our Spreecast and becoming our institutional member. Uh, I think now by this time, everyone in our network knows that you are our Diamond institutional member. So again,
Great.
we want to have a very long-term relationship with you. And here's the your like group's URL where we
Yeah.
want that you post all the things that you are doing in India, so
Sure.
that over the years we can build the knowledge base particular for India, and help these thousands and thousands of environment professionals and the new entrepreneurs, ecopreneurs that are coming in to become
Hmm.
really attuned to buying environmentally great products, and not just go about doing things that are not environmentally conservative. It's one thing to have an environmental goal, but it's the entire process where you have to use green
Absolutely.
products on every process to become 100% environmentally compliant. It's not that your only end should be the green thing. So I think, yeah, EPAT is certainly shows us the way.
Hmm. Well, and I'm very happy. I mean, I'm happy to answer questions anytime. Folks will see that on the slide I have my direct email, but I think it's a great suggestion to post questions and comments to the
Right,
Indian
exactly. You
Environmental
can,
Network, so
yeah,
that then
everyone
that's a
can go to
repository for everyone.
paryawaran.com and
Yep.
directly go to your group and post all the questions right there. And I
Sure.
know you will be happy to answer each one of them. So again, thank you
Absolutely.
for becoming our member and basically holding our hands together so we can have great environmental industry in India. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us on this precast. And for those who are not online today, you don't have to worry about anything because we'll be archiving this precast, and we'll be putting it on our website, and we'll also be sending our link to everyone else, so you all can basically use this as your starting point of getting deeper and deeper into green purchasing of electronics. And again, go to our website and start asking more and more questions. And that's how you will be more and more attuned to it. Again, thank you so much,
Excellent.
Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to connecting with your members and helping support the use of EPEAT in India.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.